Good morning,
What's going on, buddy?
Bagabuchi. How are you?
Doing all right, man. Just trying to enjoy this time off from work. I'm down here in North Carolina at the beach, but it's been raining for like the last 3 days. So we're really just kind of sitting in the house. But I mean, listen, I'm not working, so it's almost just as good.
Hey, that's the best part. So, no, I wanted to say thank you for short notice just coming on, so we could talk because there's some things I feel like my listeners need to hear from someone other than someone that looks like them.
Fair, yeah. That's. I mean, I appreciate you, asking me to come on and thinking of me. Um, but yeah, I mean, I'm an open book, so whatever you want to talk about, I'm
Yeah,
here to talk about.
no problem. So I'm just gonna do my little intro and then we're gonna get the ball rolling.
Sounds
So,
good.
all right, I just want to thank everybody for joining me on the episode of Melanin Dads. I do have a special guest with me, Mr. Anthony Akabuchi, which, now since, well, I don't know, I feel like you've always been a transparent person as long as I've known you. So I'm going to just say like this, you are the first person. I mean, this is only my eighth or ninth episode. So you're the first
Sure.
person other than a black person that's been on here.
Okay.
But also I feel like it it is important to get someone else's, the other side of the story, and just how you feel because I've known since day one that I met you so many years ago because it's been a long ass time.
It's been
Um,
over a decade at this point.
yeah, yeah, it's been a very long time, and I always knew from the first time we met that you were always going to be somebody I knew when the time came for us to fight in this battle that's been going on since the dawn of this country. That I knew that you were somebody that I always can look at and be like, okay, this is someone that's going to stand up for me and my kids when the time came to that time.
No, man, and I appreciate you saying that too, because I can think back to when we first met when I moved out here to Philadelphia from Jersey, and I didn't really know anybody. I certainly didn't know a lot of black people. Where I
Mm,
grew up, it was predominantly white. I think my high school class, we graduated, it was like 400 kids in the class. I think maybe like four black kids. Everybody else was white.
right.
You know what I mean? And so it was a bit of a culture shock, I know, when I moved out. And you and Keith,
R.I.P. to Keith
who I
Johnson.
know, who I know we both miss, you guys were the first two people that I really made, I thought like real connections with. And so, I appreciate that we're still in each other's life in any capacity here 10 years
Right.
later, man.
Yeah, I think it is important when you have that connection, or even if it's, I always tell people, hey, we might not talk for 5 years, whatever case may be, but when the time comes for us to come together like Voltron, it's not going to be like we miss any type of time or anything.
It's about who you can pick up the conversation with 5 years, 10 years later, like it never ended. You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
But I feel like that builds the best friendships.
Or the last part that's recorded.
Yeah. It already, when it cut off, it already saved the file, so I'm just gonna pick up
And then you
and
just go and edit it.
yeah, I'm at the point where I'm fuck it, I'm not doing no editing. Y'all just gonna hear the shit and just deal with it.
That's funny.
So now I was saying like it, it's not about uh having animosity towards one particular ethnicity. It's about just loving each other. I just feel like none of that is going on in the world. It's not happening in our country, especially at this point in time. You
Yeah.
know, um, but I wanted to bring you on and also let my viewers know why I brought you on. And I mentioned
Okay.
earlier about just getting the other side of the scale, but also what really made me attracted to having this conversation with you is just that your political portion, which you don't really actively, you're not like a over political person, but it's enough to
Right.
know how you feel, and I think that's important, like your stance. Like I first noticed that you started getting from, this is just from me outside looking in, and
Yeah.
that was regarding the former mayor of Indiana, which was Buttinger.
Pete Buttigieg. Yeah.
Buttigieg. So my fault. I knew I was gonna. I sat there and I was looking. I was like, I'm not gonna mess this guy's name up. I'm not gonna. And then I still
Well,
did it
listen, I
anyway.
like him because we both have terrible last names that nobody can pronounce.
Yeah, because no, your name. Anywho.
Yeah, it's all a mess.
So what? But then I was looking and saw that he originally was gonna running for the Democratic Party, and I know that you were actively involved in his political party, and bringing awareness and stuff around the city. So
Yeah.
can you first talk about that? What made you get into politics to the point where you were driven to go and promote this particular person?
Yeah. So, I mean, I've always been a political person. But obviously, when I was younger, it was a very different time and people didn't really discuss their politics as quite as openly as we do now, right? But yeah, I mean, it's something that politics has always been something that's interested me. It's always been something that I followed, even from when I was like a young kid, man. Like while everybody else in like 1992, when I was in like fifth grade, and everybody else, decorated their desks with like Ninja Turtles and that kind of stuff. Like I had like a Clinton Gore poster on there. So it's something that I've always paid attention to. I've always thought to myself to be like politically engaged, right, and politically aware, but not necessarily like politically active. Um, I mean, for me, if we're going to be honest, I mean, the ultimate, piece that really kind of started it was 2016, right? It was the election of Donald Trump. When I saw that happen, it was a thing that I just could never have imagined to actually happen in this country. From my perspective, I look at him, he's like, I grew up in New Jersey. I'm very familiar with the guy. Like he's such an obvious con man, and it blows my mind that other people don't see that.
Hmm.
So I decided at that point, I voted in every election I've had an opportunity to since I've been of legal age to do it. Presidential elections, midterm elections, Senate, whatever it might be. And at that point, I realized voting, just me walking out and voting, is no longer enough, right? Like I've done my part every time I've been asked to. Went out there, cast my ballot, and this still happened.
Hmm.
So I knew at that point that I was going to have to get more involved. I actually started going back to school, specifically to study political science and public administration, so that hopefully, in a couple years when I finish out everything there, I can and make a transition in my career to actually work within the government and try to, push positive change from that aspect. In the
Wow.
meantime, I decided that, hey, both because, it's something that I truly am passionate about and because I'm going to be trying to change my career path at 40, I decided that, hey, getting involved in this election, this presidential election cycle in some way can help me build connections and make a difference at the same time. Right. So it was kind of a double win for me in that regard. So, yeah, I mean, I was following, the Democratic primary. I've always identified as a Democrat for, basically my entire adult life, just on ideology and policy. Conservative views in general don't really line up with where my um, politics is a funny thing where, I don't know, to me, I look at politics and it's not just politics, right? Like what your politics are and what your ideology are also kind of talks about what your values are and what your morals are. Um, and
Right.
to me, the Republican Party it just does not align, right? It never really has. The Democratic Party to me has always been, the party of the working class and the party that actually looks like America, right? Like we've got white people and black people and Asian people and Native Americans. We look like a coalition that's actually made up of the makeup of the country, and that's always out to me. So yeah, I mean, I started getting involved, paying attention to the different candidates, and I landed on Pete mainly because I just saw something in him that was different. I mean, we're all talking about, things in Washington never change, and meanwhile, we're about to go into an election where you got two guys in their 70s, two old white guys in their 70s, right? So I saw Pete as somebody who was my age, right? We're both 38 years old. He's a younger guy who was active duty in the military.
Yeah,
Um,
he
so,
right. And he started early. I didn't know he was 38, and then he was in the Afghan. So he was already a
yes,
veteran
yeah,
at that age and was the mayor
yep,
since he
yeah.
was
So yeah,
30, right?
he actually deployed to Afghanistan
Oh,
while he was the mayor in South Bend. He took like a leave of absence
wow.
to go serve. He's first openly gay candidate, and so
Yeah, he's
yeah,
married to a man. Yep,
so
he's a married
he
married to a man. Yep.
it was a barrier breaker type situation as well. And it's just I saw so many different him so many different qualities that made him so interesting, and then I got to learn about really where he was policy wise, and that I really believed that he was the right guy for it. Now it didn't work out for him, and that's great. But I
Right.
had a great experience, through the process of going out and canvassing and knocking on doors and talking to people and phone banking and sending texts and organizing watch parties for debates and really just trying to bring more awareness to him as a candidate because again, we're talking about a mayor in South Bend, Indiana, who nobody really knows South Bend except for the fact that Notre Dame is there. Going up against a guy like Joe Biden, who everybody knows because he was vice president for 8 years, or Bernie Sanders, who they have Elizabeth Warren. The name recognition that those candidates held um, is a lot to overcome. Um, I
Right.
mean, what he was able to accomplish was also was pretty amazing. He won the Iowa caucus, first time openly gay candidate. Let alone ran for president. And actually, won a state. So I mean, I think I could speak for myself and probably for everybody that worked as either a volunteer on that campaign or directly for the campaign. Is we were all very proud of what we accomplished, even though it might have ultimately fell short. But
As you should, because you stood for somebody that a lot of people in this country are still afraid to be themselves, in the stance. So it's huge, and transitioning from you being on the front lines of a political party during his Democratic race run. Then I transitioned to that, to seeing pictures of you protesting down City Hall, with Black Lives Matter, posters. It really stood out to me to see, someone who by society, uh, give the title of privileged and give the title, of all these things that are given, but to see someone shed all that, uh, you know, break those, um, you know, statistics and stand in line with other people that who are fighting for equality. It just, I just wanted to say, for and foremost, thank
well,
you for
I
that.
mean, it's funny how many people, um, you know, that I've encountered, African American people that I've encountered who have thanked me. Like they'll see me walk into the protest with a sign or something like that. And I'm going by and they're saying thank you, and I'm just thinking to myself like, thank you for being so patient. Thank you for putting up with all the bullshit that we've put your community through for so long. Not me personally, but the system, right? The system that was built
Hmm.
that we all live in, and I always appreciate it, but I mean, thanks are, I mean, I appreciate it, but I feel like thanks are not necessary, and it's almost, you know, it's almost silly for me to think that I deserve it. You know what I mean? Um, because you're right. Like I come from, you know, a place of privilege just because of how I was born. it's funny how many people I think
Mhm.
struggle with that, like, especially, I mean, white people, right? Like it's tough for white people to kind of grasp that concept of white privilege. But I can think back, like I couldn't have been more than like 10 or 11, the day that I realized, like, oh, being a white guy kind of has advantages, doesn't it? You know what I mean? Like, um, it hit me so young that like I clearly wasn't going to have to deal with some of the same things that other people would for no reason whatsoever. Like I didn't earn that privilege. It's just simply that society looked at me differently. Um, so yeah, I don't know, man. I don't.
I think that's important. That part right there, that's the part I'm talking about. Where when we met, I knew you were different because one,
Yeah,
you look different. You you didn't have the, with the gauges. You didn't have the idea of what a white person's supposed to look like. You stayed true to yourself and what you wanted to be in life. And I feel like if a lot more of us were like that, the problem that we have in this country would, I can't say it would be gone, but it would be less than what it is, and more people would be as humble as you are with accepting the fact, like, based off my skin, I have these advantages over all these other people. Let me try to use this privilege to my advantage for a change and give it back to people who don't have
and
it,
that's, and not for nothing,
So
Jules, but
I
this is the crazy
yeah.
part too, right? Which is that I can tell you from experience, I can tell you from, like, my life growing up as a white person, is that like a lot of these same people that we run into, be it in life, be it on the internet, wherever, who don't want to accept that like white privilege as a concept exists, are legitimately like the same people who privately will joke about the fact that they have their lives easier. You know what I mean? Like they know it. They all know it. They all
Mhm.
know it, dude.
Yeah.
And it's just, I think the hardest thing is like people don't want to admit it publicly, because it's like having to admit publicly that you hold a certain type of privilege in society and the way that society is going to treat you, is to simultaneously admit that perhaps everything that you've earned in life wasn't always the product of your hard work. You know what I mean?
Right.
Um, and I feel like that's
Right.
like it's really tough for people to reconcile that. And I also think it's tough for I think it's tough for white people to reconcile what they think is racism and what they think is racist. Um, Speaking from my own experience, I can say is that like we were taught racism, at least through my generation. I'm 38 years old, so I grew up in the 80s, 90s. Um, but we were taught a very narrow scope of what racism is, right? So like basically, as long as I'm not running around dropping n bombs on you all day, I'm not racist. You know what I'm saying? Like we were taught this very, very. I know, I
If it was
know.
only
And
that
here's the thing: is
simple.
like, but what a lot of white people don't understand, that it's not that simple, because the way that society works and a lot of the things that are kind of built into the system that harm communities of color are built into the system in a way that shields white people's eyes from it, right? And so
Mm.
we don't see that because we don't experience it, and because we don't experience it, we're only
Is that
taught.
like what you call like pulling the is that like what you call pulling the
Oh,
wool over?
100%. Yeah, I mean, 100%. There's no doubt about it. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like there's a reason why a lot of communities of color, especially in urban areas, have issues with police, but white people in the suburbs love them some police. You know what I mean? Like they're they don't see the way that policing can be harmful. They only see the way that policing treats them. And so, how do you
Right.
break through
And
when that's their
I
entire perception
yeah.
of what policing is? Or, and that's only obviously one aspect of the way that society, treats people differently. Um, and so
Right.
we don't really see that. We don't experience that as as a collective, right? And we're taught a very narrow definition of racism, which is the overt racism, right? That open racism, not the systemic, not the covert, the things that fly under the radar. We're not really taught that, and we don't see it. And so the
Mm-hmm.
perception of what is and isn't racist, becomes very skewed depending on what group you were born into and where you grew up. It's it's something that even I don't know. I always think about this as a white guy, is like, how do I deliver this message? Because clearly black people trying to deliver this message hasn't resonated with a lot of people, you know, of my skin color, and I can't figure it out for the life of me sometimes,
So, mhm.
because I can break it down as simply as possible, and there's just something that there's like some nagging thing that's just keeping people from like getting on board, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like it should be something as easy as
Yeah.
us talking right now. And I think the thing is that I see is that instead of, people being offended by us saying like, oh, white people, it's not geared towards you. Like if the shoe don't fit,
Yeah.
don't wear
Yeah.
it. Um, that's like even when I was going on my little rant, I went on my little rant because it was so many people that I worked with, that I share energy with, that I didn't know felt this way about. I can't say myself because it was never anything ever directed towards me, but the simple fact that it's not even talked about, and I just see you, defending Trump. I, right there just tells me I know what's in your heart, and that I feel like for me, being a black person, I feel like when you were talking about that underlining, I feel like that's the biggest frustration to me because I'm like, I know you see the same things I see. It's not like I'm
Right.
watching anything different, So for that not to be like, okay, yeah, I know he's a racist, and I know he doesn't care about any minorities at all. Um, it's black and white, like
Yeah.
you
I
said,
mean, I'll be honest with you, dude. I think, you know, one of the biggest things that prevents us from being able to have these conversations though is the fact that like we're all just on the internet. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
I always think like how can we solve all these issues that we're having, right? And it's like, and I'm just as guilty because I use it, right? But I think to myself, like the first step is like shutting down all social media. You know what I mean? Like the first step to us
Mm.
being able to even have like any kind of common dialogue is like shutting down social media because a it really just becomes like people don't talk to each other civilly, you know, um, on the internet. It's the same thing as like, when you're in your car, you'll yell at somebody in front of you in a way that you would like never really yell at them to their face, because they stop short on you or something. You
Right. Yeah. Yeah. You're not gonna say
right.
it to
But
me
when I'm
walking down the
protected in my
street.
car and you're in
Like
the car in front of me, like I'll yell
yeah.
whatever. Um, but it's the same thing like online. It's like nobody's interested in having a real conversation. Everybody just wants to yell at each other. Everybody just wants to win. And the other problem is that we're just like,
Hmm.
you know, the disinformation, right? Like, I mean, you see, like, I see people older, like, for example, like, I won't mention anybody by name or anything like that, right? But like, I got a friend of mine that I know who I worked with in Sprint way back in the day in like New Jersey, but he's an older guy. So he's probably, I don't know, 20 to 30 years older than me or so, right? Older white guy, Italian guy. And by all accounts, this guy is, you know, lines up with a lot of what I see with myself. He doesn't really particularly like the conservative policies. Definitely does not like Trump as a president in general, for a variety of reasons. But when it comes to this issue, he's an all lives matter guy. And it's so weird to me because it's like, I know him. I know he's got a good heart. I know, um, anything that I know he's not a bad guy by any means, and I truly don't think that he's not a racist guy, at least not in that narrowly defined definition that we were taught growing up, right? He's not an overtly, racist dude, but
Mm-hmm.
he struggles to, because he gets fed a lot of this propaganda online, where it's like they're trying to discredit Black Lives Matter as a movement by obviously, focusing on the very, very small portion of the protests that have turned into riots and looting. Um, which again, it's like I don't agree with that. I don't think anybody's really doing themselves many favors with rioting and with looting, but like you can't just simply try to stop the rioting and looting and condemn the rioting and looting without actually trying to do anything about the root cause that got us to the rioting and the looting. You know what I mean? Like,
Right,
and that's
right. And they
yeah,
kind of piggyback before we move forward on what we were saying. I recently, because I don't know, I've been trying to listen to more, uh, you know, impactful music, and I was listening to Lupe Fiasco, and he said, even though, like one of his songs, he said, even though we out here rioting, um, you along the lines of my hustler's mentality doesn't want me to go to
yeah,
prison. So if we were really focused on looting and causing damage, then we're definitely missing the message that we're trying to get across. So that's the last thing I
yeah,
think that we're thinking about. And there's always other factors that go in. So that's why I really don't try to go into the speculation and the covert things that go behind to discredit what we're
yeah,
trying to do as a country. And I think that's where, the biggest thing goes in, like, okay, outside looking in, if I was this person, why would I destroy property if the message is I want more people like me to be able to live and, reduce the prison population, that's been systematically in place since, slavery,
yeah,
so um it's one of those things where we got to have some type of common sense because if you look through history, it's been the same cycle. So for these people to say all lives matter, yeah,
yeah,
we believe all lives matter too. But this is why we're fighting
yeah.
for
Yeah, I
this,
mean,
you
that's the
know?
thing that always blows my mind too, and that's like the conversation that I like try to. That's it's kind of the way that I try to approach it when I have these conversations with people that you know feel the need to kind of be in that all lives matter position, or to be anti BLM because they're being fed a lot of content which is really only highlighting the violence. You know what I mean? To me, I don't
Right.
know, dude. I look at BLM as a movement, and I don't see how it's any different, or it's not just a natural extension of the civil rights movement. You, you know what I'm saying? Like, to me, this just seems like the next step in the
Right.
process, right? Like, I don't know if, well, yeah, I
Like an
mean, or
upgraded
sometimes you
version.
have to refine it because let's remember the civil rights movement wasn't about getting new rights. It was about getting back the rights that were
Hmm.
already given, that were slowly chipped away at through
To everybody
segregation and
else.
Jim Crow. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
people forget that, like, just because the rights are gained doesn't mean that they're not able to be taken away. Um, and so it's always a
Right.
push and a pull. It's always a battle that way. And to me, I just see Black Lives Matter as this is just the next step. It's the next extension of the civil rights movement because I mean, racism both overtly and covertly, it's not like it was solved in '68, or you know what I mean. Like it wasn't solved when we passed the Civil Rights Act. It was just getting us one step closer. Um, yeah, and I
Right.
remember.
which which uh which you think about it, Martin Luther King's
Yeah,
speech was 57 years ago, man. I mean, I'm 34 and you're 38.
no,
That ain't a lot of time ago,
no. I mean, and
at
I
all.
mean when you think
Yeah.
about the history of America, we still haven't even reached the point where for half of our history we didn't have black people as slaves. You know what I mean? Like for the majority of our history,
Right.
slavery still existed at this point. Like us getting away from slavery and us um, making the steps that we need to find racial justice and racial equality, like we're not there yet. Anybody who thinks that you can just step out of, hundreds of years of slavery and then things are like equal in like about like 100 or like 150 years, like you're crazy. It doesn't work that way. Like it's just simply not the way that the world works. We still got a lot of work to do, and I do hope that more people, come to see that and come to see that um, it's not about giving to one group and taking away. It's not a zero sum game, right? Like for the black community to gain some wins here doesn't mean that the white community has to take L's all day. You know what I mean? Like all boats can rise together. You know what I mean?
Right.
And that's actually, I think, one of the most fundamental, you know, misconceptions, especially among white working class people, right? Is like for some reason they see Black Lives Matter as like an enemy, when in reality it's like if we actually got what we were asking for, right? The policies that Black Lives Matter is advocating for when it comes to prison reform or anything like that, white poor white people would benefit from that as well. Because a lot of these issues aren't
Exactly.
strictly on the lines of race. A lot of them have to do with class as well, right?
With class.
Because
Yes, sir.
a poor white guy, while not as likely, a poor white guy definitely is, you know, way more likely than a wealthy white guy to end up in the prison system. Maybe not as much as, a person of color, but they're it's definitely an increase. You know what I'm saying? If that group of people, if you got white working class people and black working class people to actually come together, bro, it would be the end. But the game is to divide us, and unfortunately,
Right.
it seems like right now they're very good at doing that, especially when it comes to the Black Lives Matter movement and the kind of Rorschach test that creates in people. Like depending on who you are, when you look at that, what do you see, right? For a second, I thought
Right.
you had it.
And
Back in June, I
I
mean, the numbers
mhm.
were that were in support of Black Lives Matter and what the movement was, had reached a tipping point where for the first time, more than 50% of white people were on were on board. When they did polling on it. Since then, that's slipped, and I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that it has to do with has to do with the violence, but not just the violence in itself. The fact that you've got news stations and you have an entire right wing conservative echo chamber that exists on the internet to continue to flood these messages of the violence, the anarchy, the chaos. It's out of control. You know,
And that's what I was trying to say. I may not be as political as the next person is, but I think we were talking that it just comes down to, like you were saying, ideology, and also just being humane. You know, I might, in a lot of even these policies that these politics do have don't even hit the classes that we're in. So for people to be solely engaged in what the policies that these people are bringing,
yeah,
it baffles me. You know, um, uh, you know, John McCain passed. The first thing the president says is he's a loser. Because he got captured, but yet, he got out. He used his privilege to get
yeah,
out of being drafted. But then you look at people like Muhammad Ali, where he's like, I'm not going over and killing those Vietnam people
Yeah.
because they didn't do nothing to my people. Even though the country I'm living in is killing my people every single day,
Yeah. Try to
they
run my
stripped his
community.
title and try to put him in jail. So so you see those things through history, and it's like you gotta wake up, and luck, thankfully, you were one of the sound people to be like, okay, I can't have somebody that I'm calling my friend going through this unjust system alone. I need to help him. I need to help them. I need to, even when you look back and see like the civil rights movements, and, white people were getting
Yeah.
hosed and spit on and
Yep.
called, a Negro lover just for wanting the next person to have the same rights as them. It's a different type of evil, it's, I I think it's something that we would never succumb to because we're so humble and open about these type of things and the hurt that we can see, through movies, through TV, um, through
Yeah.
watching just life,
Like I said, I mean, I was so sheltered, growing up, living in all white neighborhood, and it's not like I was ever, again, I wasn't ever overtly racist, right? But I definitely benefited from, different things of
Mhm.
racism. And I can remember growing up, and you hear things that sound so matter of fact, but then you look back on it and you're like, oh man, that was super racist. Like, and I didn't even question it because I was just a kid hearing it. You know what I mean? Like, um, it took definitely me moving out to Philly and getting myself out of that comfort zone and experiencing, something totally different and being in a melting pot and literally like, moving from a place where it's like, I hardly ever saw, black people to being like the only white dude on the block. You know what I mean? Like, it really changed my perception because I really got a bird's eye view of what really, the differences are from, places where I grew up and came from, and being, in a city or someplace where the makeup is very different. I am super thankful that I decided to do that. You know what I mean? Like, I I don't know, man. It very much, shaped or maybe like even reshaped a lot of, who I was and how I was able to see things. I think that were deeper than the surface. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Because you already had like that
Yeah.
itch you wanted to scratch, but I feel like you being in the mix, and I one thing, I think you being able to see, life a mile, at a time, which
Hmm.
always being a biker through the city, you know, you get to see different aspects and see, the homeless people going through what they're going through, and, being in the heart of the city, do different parts, South Philly. So you
Yeah.
see different parts of the city and seeing where the different, areas of the city are who they, focus on. And, because even though Philadelphia is majority black people, a lot of it still has racist people. And,
Yeah.
at the end of the day, like I'm part of the black community, and it pisses me off and it hurts me when I see other black people killing each other, but that has
Nothing to do.
nothing to do with
Nah.
police killing black people, because there's white people killing white people in
100%.
their communities every single day. And that's another thing you say where the deflection comes off of the real matter of cops killing black people, opposed to, okay, well, y'all killing each other every single day. Yeah, it's 300 deaths in Philly, but that has nothing to do with somebody who is sworn, who is, when I look at them, I should feel a sense of protection. I should be like, okay, my kids are going to go out and be safe, not like, hey, man, y'all might go out here and die. Let's not go out. Let's not have a childhood because I don't want y'all to die. You know, I think both matters
No,
don't
no.
have any
So
correlation at
there's
all.
man. So there's a couple things I want to unpack there, right? Which is like, so for first and foremost, um, we'll start here, but I'll get back to it, which is like you can't compare people, like you can't compare civilians killing citizens to police killing citizens, right? There's straight up, those are two different things. So it's like that's the first place where they're unequal. And the second one is like, we can talk about black on black crime all day, and like people love to use that as some deflection away from having to actually talk about the real issue. Is like, oh, these black people are, but the reality of the matter is like that's actually part of another unfulfilled promise of this country, right? Because yeah, um, black
Yep.
people kill black people, but the thing is like white people kill white people, and like more. I'd have to look up the statistic, but I'm like pretty positive more white people kill other white people in America every year than black people, right? And that's because there's more white people overall, first and foremost. And secondly, it's because people tend to kill people who live around them. So when you look at that, what that says to me is
Right.
that's saying that we're still too segregated. That's saying to me like we still haven't fulfilled the promise of actually integrating our country, right? And so
Nope. Because you see it through. I mean, you listen, Akabuchi. You've been in the city for long enough to see
I'm
the
part of it. I'm
gentrification,
part of it, dude.
long enough to
You know what
see.
I mean? Like, I
Yeah,
don't know what else
yeah,
to
man.
do because it's like
Yeah,
I still want to be a homeowner. I still want, you know what I mean? Like I still want to do these things, but like I'm part of a thing that's happening that I do see actively as harming other people. So it's tough.
yeah, yeah. And I think that's the thing because even when I'm from my grandma lived in West Philly, and that was when I was growing up, that was a
Yeah,
real bad part of the city. There's people rolling dice on the corner. The bar on Balmer Avenue, it got shot up, people were killed. But now I look at it, there's a ice cream shop next door, white people walking their dogs, and now it's more cops in the area than it was when I was a child because they're trying to protect, these universities, businesses,
property
their
over people,
condos,
man.
and the credibility. Yeah, yeah, it's big business over life, man, and it's I feel like if we had more younger people um that were in charge of just more so worrying about the humanity and the mental state of
Yeah,
the citizens, the city would be better. It would be less crime. It would be less finger pointing. Um, I don't know. That's just how I feel, and it's a time where things need to change, and it's just like this fight has been going on. Um, not only for black people, but even if you look back to slavery, when white people were getting killed for being part of the
yeah,
Underground Railroad, or buying houses for black people during the segregation um, time, and they're them finding out about it, and then taking these people homes and killing them for trying to help
yeah.
out black people. So it's a thing where you instill fear,
Right.
nobody's gonna want to do
And then
anything.
the unfortunate
I
aspect
think it's
to all of that
uh,
too is that like just because of the sheer numbers, right, of how the population of this country is made up, is that like black people as a community, as a whole, as a collective, can't make the gains from a political perspective, right? And in the idea of like policies, that would help to make things better and more equal. They legit can't do it without white people. And that's like also like kind of like a really screwed up aspect of it is like just because the way the country's makeup is made up and there's just so many white people, like you can't get any of that accomplished until you can get at least a certain portion of white people on board. You know what I'm saying? And like that's the that's like the
mm,
hardest part. And again, like as a
yeah,
white person who I think, I like to believe that I see things pretty clearly. Um, I still haven't figured out what that magic formula is to get people to like open their eyes to this shit, to really like, wake up a bit and see that, the world isn't fair. And like all we're really asking for is to make it fair. To make like let's all
Right.
have like a level playing field here.
You, Akabuchi, you ever hear of this lady? Her name was not was, but is Arlie like Horschild. These last names be killing me. But she's a
Okay.
scholar from Berkeley, and I started. She wrote this book called Stranger in My Own Land, and I didn't read it, but I've listened to a lot of her interviews that she talked about, and she was saying that she wanted to make a book talking about from the white person's aspect of how they felt
Mm,
about equality. And a lot, so what she did was she traveled to Louisiana and like interviewed different people, and a lot of them, had this, we all had this idea of everybody waiting in line, and there's this, which is the American dream, and you have like a map, and the map is like of all of us going through this door of equality. So we're all standing in line, and what she was saying was that when you were talking about privilege, is so blinded, because they, is like, for example, when
hmm
Obama, became a president, um, their first thought wasn't, okay, we got a good person in office, or we got somebody that's going to, you know, it was like, oh, he's just here to marginalize and make the black people
Yeah.
happy. This is their president. Now I'm gonna be, now I'm gonna be put on the back burner, and I'm gonna be put behind. And then, they show the next
hmm
person, which is Donald Trump, how he's a savior of the white oppression, because, to certain white people, Obama was only here to make us happy, in the fulfillment that we aren't,
You know,
we're equal as them,
what's funny too there is that the
so
real irony of it is that I know so many black people that are like so disappointed in Obama. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I know a lot of people as well, but I was telling you earlier that, politics, a lot of people don't realize that a lot of times it's not
yeah,
even the president that makes them up,
yeah. But it's
um
funny because
so, but
I know so
I
many
could
black
say
people
that
who like
every
legitimately are disappointed with Obama because they felt that like, he didn't do enough for the black community. You know what I'm saying? Like, so it's so funny
right.
that that you have this segment of like white people who like legitimately like think that like all he ever tried to do was for black people and like didn't care about anybody else because you have like a pretty substantial I think segment of like the black population that wish that he would have done more. And I also understand that like as the first black president, he was also very constrained in like what he could do. I mean, let's face facts. I mean, like nobody wanted to
Right.
work with him on anything. You know what I'm saying? Like you had a Republican Party that basically
Nope.
from the moment he took office, said we're going to do everything we can to like prevent this guy from being able to accomplish anything. You know what I mean? Like it's tough, and I think you're right there where it's like I don't think that mechanics of the government, work or how, politics necessarily works all together. I think we all look at the president and say like, all right, this is the guy, like he's going to fix it all and forget that like Congress holds typically Congress holds most of the power. You know what I mean? It's not
The
even the president
power.
that holds.
Yeah, because we're not right. We're not a communist country, and we don't have one person making, the individual decisions. So even if the president makes a
Yeah.
decision, they can still overturn that.
Yeah.
So it's
So I
like,
mean, yeah, I mean, I think sometimes people forget that I think they, as a country, we put a little bit too much weight on the presidency in general. But I mean, that's neither here nor there. That's kind of a different conversation. But yeah, I mean, don't get
but
like a natural
but
reaction.
I was saying to that, I was saying to the point was that, at the end of the day, you want your leader to, one, be able to talk, and you want to know that when you see them on TV, like, for example, if when rioting or when somebody shot up something, Obama was never talking about, if he was talking about the violence, he was
Yeah.
talking about the why behind it. And I feel like that's all we want. We want the why behind it fixed. We want the why behind it addressed, and we want the why behind it talked about. And that's what we, the leader of the, best country in the world should be able to do, is speak and be able to comfortably speak. I'm thinking
Yeah.
about when Chadwick Boseman died. I'm thinking about when John Lewis
Yeah.
died, when John McCain died. This
Yep.
person was at all their funerals. He talked at them, and he talked great things about them. Regardless of whatever person was trying to hinder him from being a president, he never ill
No, he
fated
was
them
a
or
guy that,
talked
I
about them.
mean, for better or for worse, and sometimes, if I'm going to be honest, I think sometimes to maybe his own detriment, he was a guy who wanted to try to bring people together, and he wanted to try to find those areas of common ground. You know what I'm saying? So that we could have those conversations, so we could get deeper, so we could dig deeper. Obviously, that doesn't always work out, but I mean, I don't know. It's the model that most presidents, have followed. I can't, even presidents that I disagreed with, when push came to shove, tried to unite the people of the country behind something. You know what I mean? Again, even if I don't agree with it.
Yeah,
And that's fundamentally my
yeah.
biggest problem with the current president that we have is like, yeah, I've got a bunch of issues with his policies. I've got a bunch of issues with, um, a variety of things. But fundamentally, it just comes down to like, he's the only dude I've ever seen who, like, from the moment he got in, like, he's only been the president of his base. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's only served to try to divide people. He's never tried to be the president of all people. He's never tried to unite us in any way, because obviously it doesn't serve him. It doesn't serve his
Mm-hmm.
agenda. You know what I mean? And I get that, but that's just like a level of like narcissism and selfishness that like those aren't the qualities that you want in the role.
That right, that nobody has that
Yeah,
type of
yeah. You know
power
what?
should
Those aren't the
be.
qualities that you want in that role. But yeah, dude, it's I don't know. It's a tough place to be. I mean, I I'm sure there have been times in America's history where things have felt worse. Tensions have been, just as high or maybe higher. But I can say with absolute certainty that in my lifetime, and me and you were about the same age, so in our lifetimes, the moment that we're living in right now feels more tense and more divided and more angry
Oh,
than
no,
I've ever seen it.
no doubt, man. I think the last right. I think the last time that I feel like it's been, if not similar, was
Yeah, but
when
we
9/11
came
happened.
together for at least a little bit.
Which tomorrow,
You know what I'm
right?
saying? Like, we came
Oh
together for at
yeah,
least a little.
yeah. We
That's not happening at
yeah.
all right now.
Yep. Even though, no, not at all. Um because it's just it's so much division, and then the panic from this virus that, before, all the radical supporters were
Yeah,
saying it was fake, and you know these people aren't, they're lying about the number, even if they're
yeah,
fluctuating the numbers. It doesn't come down to
yeah.
American people are dying because of this. And what you see on the recordings now that came out, that he's
I
been
know, dude.
actively
I've
downplaying
been on vacation, so I've
this
been trying to really
virus.
not like pay attention to it. But I saw that one come across last night, and I was like, it's just so
Yeah,
it's one of those things where it's like, of course he did. Like, I'm not surprised anymore. It's just like, yeah, oh, of course.
yeah.
Yeah,
No,
of
not at
course there's a
all. We
tweet.
all knew it though. All the regular
Yeah,
people
yeah.
knew this shit already.
But the thing is, like, if you look at the
You
if
know.
you look at the pandemic and you look at Black Lives Matter, and you see the way that the administration kind of views it, and a lot of those radical kind of supporters, it's kind of through the same lens, right? What I was saying before, like property over people, right? It's the same thing, right? Like, they're prioritizing
Yep.
businesses over people's lives when it comes to the pandemic. They're prioritizing businesses over people's lives when it comes to Black Lives Matter. You know what I mean? Like, that's fundamentally that I can never get down with that. That's just not like, I'll just never.
No. But the crazy part is, bro, that even the people that own these businesses aren't even standing up to the protesters to save, to, oh, don't destroy my business. They're like, listen,
Mhm.
equality matters more than
Yeah,
this business. I have insurance. I'm going to get my money back. There's a virus, so pretty much
yeah,
my business is done anyway. Then you have people traveling 20 miles to save someone else's business. So now somebody,
yeah,
multiple people lost their lives because of the ideal that you need to save businesses and property over cherishing people's lives, that now has a ripple effect because these people are missing out of other people's lives and they're not having the impact they need to make the stance against the,
yeah. And I think the malicious thing
injustice,
is like one of the scariest aspects of this whole thing. Like that's the thing that's kind of really got me going. Is it's like,
Yeah,
and here's
man.
the thing that's like messed up, dude. Is like I actually, you know, I don't know, man. There's a part of me that has like a bit of empathy for that kid. You know what I'm saying? Like because he was like radicalized
Oh yeah.
online, you know, filled his head with this blue lives matter, back to blue, anti BLM, propaganda. It's all chaos, it's all rights, and that's what got him out there in the first place. I mean, he's like 17 years old, impressionable kid. Did anything that he do was right? No,
Right.
absolutely. Should he get charged? Yes, absolutely. But I mean, like again, like what got him out there? How did we end up in this place that we got this kid out there? Um, and the fact, he's 17 years old. I think about when I was younger and recognizing, um, the injustices, right? The inequalities, the racism, and seeing that. And one of the things I would hold in the back of my mind, that would make me feel a little bit better was like, you know what though, you know, I know my generation, we view things differently, and time is going to help fix some of these things, and the next generations they're going to get it too. But now I see a lot of these young, super right wing white supremacists, people, they're all younger than me. That's what's scary to me.
Yeah, man.
Like the promise was supposed to
That
be that us and the following generations, we were supposed to grow out of this racism, right? Like things were supposed to. Right, because it's
Yeah,
taught,
because
and
it's
so
taught,
it's supposed
right?
to get better naturally. And now I'm seeing a generation of at least a segment of the generation younger than me that is getting taken in with all this online right wing propaganda, and they get them slow. It starts with little memes, little jokes. It normalizes it, and the next thing you know, you're going down these rabbit holes, and then you're out shooting protesters.
Yeah, I went in the rabbit hole just because I wanted to see, not even see, but I wanted to know why they, support this person. I'm not saying I'm pro anything. I'm
Yeah,
pro human life. I'm pro equality. I'm pro, if you're gay, if you're both, if you're in the process, whatever you are,
yeah.
always stay true to yourself. And that has nothing to do with me. I don't have any ill towards any,
I think that's
whatever
what
you
maybe
get
you
down with,
agree
you
with
get
me, is
down
that
with.
we both hold
But
that same
everyone
kind of
should be able to be
mentality, which is
treated.
like, you do you. You make yourself happy. Like it ain't affecting me. Why should I?
Yeah,
What am I gonna get bent out of shape to try to stand in your
yeah,
way? You know what I mean? Like,
right. Why do I care that you? And now, unless like you trying to come at me, then we need to have that talk. Like, hey, I don't get
yeah,
down like that. And then from there, now and
yeah,
now
we're
we
cool.
could be friends. I know plenty of uh gay people, male and female, that are the most amazing
Yeah,
people in life, you know, um, but that comes from a place of being comfortable
yeah,
with who you are. If I'm not gay, why do I got a
yeah,
problem that you gay? You know, and it's crazy because I've been told gay before from telling another
yeah,
man I love them, and I have to say, hey, just because I tell another man I love them doesn't make me gay, because in my head, it's
yeah.
like I love females, so you just have to be comfortable with yourself. And I think a lot of people who are homophobic, those are the closet ones. Those are the ones that don't want nobody else to know what they into, and they're gonna go to bat, for whatever, whatever idol, in their head that they want to, proclaim to everybody else, So it's a lot of people not living the
No,
truth to themselves.
I think you're definitely got something there,
And
man. I think it's and they might not all be like closeted, but I mean, well, I will say, it's like you tend to always run into these stories about people that were like deeply religious or like into like gay conversion therapy, like led these organizations that were like anti-gay, like coming out like 10 years later. You know what I mean? Like they invested so much of their time
hmm
into a movement because they were afraid. Now, is that everybody? No. I mean, a lot of people got their reasons for being bigoted. Let's be honest. There's a whole wide reason there, but yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people just, I think it comes down to whether they're gay, whether they're not gay, whether they're closet, whatever it is. I think you're right, though. A lot of people don't live their truths. People are so worried about looking a certain way for society. You know what I'm saying? Like that. I don't know if that's a
yeah,
resentment that
a
they
society
feel.
that don't care about you to begin with.
I don't
So
know if
why are
it
you
comes from a
worried?
resentment where it's like, I don't feel comfortable enough to live out my own truth, and so like I'm resentful that you're doing it. I don't know. You know what I mean? It's tough. It's not the way that I think. It's not the way that
Like
I
a
think, so
jealousy
I'll
type
never
thing.
know for sure.
Right. And let me ask you one thing before
Yeah.
I'll let you enjoy the rest of your trip. First of all, I appreciate you spending over an hour with me. I really didn't think that we
Honestly,
were going to be talking
I
that
can talk to
long,
you so
but
long. I can talk to you all day,
I
Jules.
feel like this is true. This is true. You are you have one of those voices and that energy that we could talk about the Muppets, and it's like, yo, it's 8,000 things that we could discuss about that. So, but let me ask you this: through your journey in life, have you ever like, um, you know, dove into like mental health
Oh,
at all
100%.
yourself?
Yeah. Um, I was resistant to it for like a really long time, honestly. And
Yeah, man,
I
me too, man.
started I should have been in therapy for a really long time. So, I mean, it all really goes back to, I mean, if you've done therapy, if anybody who's listening has done therapy, it's like we all know like how much of our hangups and how much of our issues get rooted back to our childhoods, right? Like it almost all always goes back there. So, my dad died when I was like 12. You know what I mean? Like, he had like Crohn's disease back when they couldn't really treat it, and died from the complications of surgeries and stuff like that.
Mm,
It is what it is, but I never really did anything like counseling or any kind of like therapy, grief therapy or anything like that. So from like 12, I hung on to like a lot of different things. My life kind of went sideways, when I wasn't living with my dad anymore and I had to go like live with my mom, my stepdad, and I was in a situation, where, we grew up like super poor. Um, it was kind of abusive, the relationship between my stepmom or my mom and my stepdad, and kind of growing up in that environment. And as a little segue, I'll say white people have struggles too, but none of those struggles were a product of the fact that I was black, right? And that's I can grow up, white people can grow up poor, all those things, right? So again, privilege, right? So just to be clear, I'm not, we all have struggles, but not all of them are the product of our skin. But anyways, right? So dealing with a lot of that growing up, and it really, I mean, it really screwed me up pretty bad. And but I always believed, I was because I was in an environment and grew up in an environment where I had to do a lot to take care of myself and I had to be independent. I believed that I always had to rely on myself for anything. And that was one of the biggest reasons why I think I was so
right.
resistant to doing therapy or trying to seek out any help, was that the idea that I couldn't do it on my own meant that I was weak, or at least that was the perception that I had. And so, I mean, to be honest with you, it's just like it took a bunch of failed relationships because I didn't really understand how to be in a relationship because a good relationship was never modeled for me, as a child. Me,
hmm
just not being able to be good at, like, I eventually just had to get myself into a place where I could feel okay. Like I felt like I was carrying so much baggage around with me that I didn't like talk to anybody about for so long, and I felt like there was a part of me that was like the outside facing me was like a projection of the person that I wanted to be, and the person that, you know, I actually was like a secret, if that makes any sense. Um, but yeah, that
Um, to
yeah,
piggyback off of that, to piggyback off what you said, I definitely agree with you 100%. You know, my mental health journey didn't start until maybe 2 years, 3 years, maybe. And I think the real impact was when I was at T-Mobile. My mom
good
was
deal.
killed. I don't remember that, but um, yeah, yeah. And at that point, I still didn't get help, and that was like my first year of marriage, and it was very hard for me to be um active in my kids' life and in my wife's life as well because I had so much baggage prior to my mom being killed that now starting to come up to the surface like, you know, a clock sink,
Hmm.
slowly it's starting to bubble up, um, and it got to the ceiling where I couldn't deal with anymore. I was yelling more. I
Yeah.
was becoming violent. Thinking about hurting myself. Um,
Yep.
sad all the time. And you gotta go through that. You see a projection. You look in the mirror, and you're like, okay, this is a shell of me. This is not who I want my kids to see, who I want my friends to see, who I want my wife to see. Now it's time for me, I grew up the same way as you. Only, my dad was there, but he really wasn't there
Yeah.
for other reasons. But you end up having that mentality of I gotta take care of myself. It's only gonna
Yeah.
be me till the wheels rock off, and you don't get
Yeah.
fully vulnerable with anybody because you know that they might
100%.
pull the rug underneath you at any time. So you gotta be prepared for that. And then you get in these relationships with women and you fail them
Hmm.
because of your insecurities. If not, uh, you know, if you're not doing it,
No, it's
you
not
know,
intentional.
uh, on purpose, it might, yeah, it's not intentional. It's something where we didn't grow up seeing, loving people love each other. It was so much
Yep.
toxic to where that's all we know, but we really don't want that. But we don't have any other way to navigate through it because we've never had the examples to get it to be able to
Yeah, I mean,
know what that feels
what I
like,
would say is, and maybe you would relate to this as well, but like in the most simple terms, because of my independence, because of the idea that I felt like I always had to rely on myself, um, I never learned how to put other people before me. Right. And so, not
Nope.
in a malicious way, and not in a way where like I'm actively trying to harm other people, but even in little decisions in life, I always prioritize myself because that was how I had to survive as a kid. It was by prioritizing myself. So
Hmm.
essentially, it's like I was living a very selfish life, even when I didn't realize it. And it took that
Mm.
ruined so many relationships for me, right? And it took me being in a relationship, in the relationship that I am in now, that I've been in, for going on like 5 years now. It took getting to a point within this relationship of you know almost losing it because I didn't understand how to not prioritize other people. That's what eventually drove me
Mm.
in. Was realizing like I had made so many excuses for relationships that I had in life, of the different reasons why they ended and why they weren't my fault. Or in some cases, I would like actively choose out partners that I knew like there was going to be an expiration date on that, like from the gate, so that I wouldn't have to worry about the
Mm.
feeling of losing, because it was like I was prepared for that loss from the beginning.
Yeah, you put a
Yeah.
date on it, so
It was
you
always
already
about
protected
protecting me,
yourself.
you know what I mean? And
Hmm.
but dude, I got into like I'm hitting
Yeah.
my mid 30s. Like, how long am I going to keep wasting time, making the same mistakes over and over and just finding new excuses as to why I don't I don't need to assume any responsibility. You know what I mean? And that's what
Right.
got me there, man. And I've been doing it for about 2 years or so now. I think we're about,
Yeah. So it sounds like
yeah,
we
similar
started
time.
our journey around the
I
same
do
time, and
individual therapy, and
maybe,
then I do a
yeah.
couples therapy. as well. Just because it gives us an opportunity to communicate better. You know, it's like if there's something that's like really
Yeah.
tough, and I don't always know how to talk about it, or I don't know how to broach that conversation because it's still not something that I'm comfortable with because I'm not used to it. It's like I know that in the next 2 weeks we're going to be in a place where I'm not going to have any other choice but to bring it up, right? And it's actually like relieving to know that like there's this environment I can go to where I know I'm going to have a chance to talk about this, and even if it comes off wrong, we're going to have an opportunity to work through it. You know what I mean? Um,
And I think that's the important piece, you know, that your partner knows that you are
yeah,
actively doing everything sound to protect your mental health, but also they know that we're doing this because we don't want to mess up what we
yeah,
have
no,
because we know it's
100%.
a
Yeah, I
good
mean,
thing.
it's for me, it's for the relationship, it's for a lot of different things, but they all coincide. But what's
Mm-hmm.
funny is that like I was always so resistant
Mm-hmm.
to therapy. I was so resistant to therapy, and even like when I first started doing it, there was like a period of time where like I was like, oh man, like I don't even really want to like let people know about it or anything. You know what I mean? Like I'll still keep this to myself. It's funny how, and I noticed this. I think I noticed this with you, right? Just kind of following along with your journey, from a distance, and I noticed it with myself. I noticed with other people who have kind of, finally taken the plunge and said, "I need help." It's crazy how quickly you become comfortable talking about it. It's crazy how quickly, you know, you
Yeah.
recognize the benefits that it has to you, and it's like you can't you like you want to let other people know, like especially people that are close to you that you know that they got struggles too. And it's like, hey, like you become like this advocate for it, in a sense, like in such a short period of time where you were so resistant to it that you would never even do it yourself. And then, it's like you snap your fingers, and the next thing you know, you're trying to encourage people to help themselves. Um, that's kind of a beautiful part of the whole journey as well.
But to piggyback off of that, I'll give you an example. Like my first day at my new job, I was talking to this young lady, and I said to her, I, I said what she was telling me. I said, I really think that
Yeah,
therapy will help you. And she looked at me.
yeah,
This is somebody I just met. She said, "Well, why you say that, Julian?" I said, "Because the things that you're telling me are things that by you going to therapy
yeah,
will help relieve that tension." And I tell you not, man, I gave her a recommendation for
yeah,
a therapist, not my particular therapist, but another one that I went to before. Um, and I recommended and said, "Hey, look, this is where you start at, and this is where you get, all your pain, your strife, all that. You go there and you dump it, and I'm telling you, 9 out of 10 times you're going to be a better person." And you could feel that energy that somebody's given, that they're in a better
100%.
mental space. You could tell, like even without me asking you that question, I knew that you were going through that. I could tell that you were going through that just by the way your words were coming off. They're not held with no anger. They're not held with no aggression. Those are words that are coming off like I'm a man that's going and finding his peace and being comfortable with it. And I feel like if a lot of
Yeah,
us, especially men, um, white men, black men, uh, purple men, whoever you are, you need to go and seek the help that is out there, that you can go. Now with the pandemic, they're doing Google Meets now, so there's ways to find to get help. And if you are upset and you're depressed and you have anxiety, if you're sad about your dad dying, your mom dying, your friend, your cousin, go out and get some help opposed to you
yeah,
going out and killing somebody because of that anger, you know? Um, so uh, with that said, I always leave my shows with a call to
yeah,
action. So I want to just kind of take some things that I got from our conversation, that I'm going to take and I'm going to move forward with. And, as they say, you always, you pass it along,
Right.
you pass it to the next person, because that bit of information can make or break somebody's mental. Um, the things that I took away from our conversation today, Ant, was that, you know, it sounds like there is a lot of white people that know that they are privileged. Um, and that we have to do a better job of being comfortable with having the conversations. Like, yeah, I know I have a privilege based on my skin, but that's not who I am. That's not that's of course that's going to be the perception that the millions of the people in this country are going to go by. But the real people know that a lot of us know that,
Yeah.
that you're privileged, but how many of us are asking, what are you doing with that privilege, and do you know that you actually have it? So um I wanted to take that part, and also, piggybacking with the mental health. um it's very important, man. It's something that I hope you continue going through. It's something I know that's going to make you a better person. And you know if you start going through your political part, you know just know that you're going to have somebody there with you that is going to be able to, you know be on the front lines with you, and stand for what you stand, because I know at the end of the day where your heart is. And I feel like more people need to
Yeah.
be like us, and like you, as far as a white man
Well,
in
listen,
America,
Jules, again, man, I really appreciate you, asking me to kind of, jump on and have this conversation with you. It really does mean a lot. You know what I mean? That, when you were thinking to yourself, you wanted to bring on somebody, who was white to have that conversation with, that, you thought of me. It really means a lot. But
Even if, not to cut into you, even if there was not all this bullshit going on with equality and all that, the mental health aspect, I can see, man. I can read the words that you're putting out, and I know that that's somebody that's
yeah,
going through a mental health journey. So regardless if you was black, white, Latino, whatever the case may be,
yeah,
we need to have this talk. When I started this platform, I feel like something came to me and told me what I
yeah,
need to do and who I need to talk to. And one of the people along my journey, it had to be you. If it was now, if it was next year, whatever the case may
yeah.
be, we
And,
needed
and
to
and
have
I
this
will
talk.
say, dude, man, yeah, all the political stuff aside,
Yeah.
dude, I really hope that if there's anything from the conversation that, can reach out to anybody, it is that mental health piece. And I hope, any of the future conversations that you're having with other people, that conversation keeps rolling, because, I don't know who still needs to hear it, but, they
It's
need to
all
hear
Garrett,
it. You
man.
know what I mean? It's okay to ask for help. It's okay to not have to bear, the burden of everything alone, and to do it silently. Like, that will break you. You can only do it for so long. You know what I mean?
That's a
Like, we,
lot,
we
man.
all can only carry so much weight before our knees buckle. You know what I'm saying? Like, so if you've been even thinking about it, if you've been on the fence, if you've been saying, I got to do something, but I just don't know what to do, I'm telling you, just go find somebody, go talk to somebody, and it'll put you down a path, man. That's going to make
Yeah.
you feel so much better.
Yeah. Well, and I appreciate, man. We're definitely gonna have another talk soon.
I'm always open for it, brother.
You know, because I really enjoy your spirit and you as a person. So continue making, your girl
Gosh,
a
you make
very
me a
lucky
lucky person,
person.
man.
I'm pretty sure on both ends. Yeah, yeah, man. And that's where the mental health piece comes from. Like you said, now when you start thinking about other people, now you have to look at, how am I going to make my energy better for not only
Hmm.
myself but for us, and vice versa on her end. And now y'all come together, and now y'all making a collabo. So um I really appreciate you coming on, man. And besides, if you
No,
have
man, I
anything
think
else,
we're
man, I think
good.
that's
But
gonna be
yeah,
it for
thanks
today.
again for asking me to be on. And the only other thing I'll say, man, is I can't wait till we're out of this pandemic, and maybe me and you get together for a little FaceTime, man. Yeah, dude, anything, dude.
Yeah, grab a
need
beer,
some.
man.
I need to see my people again, man. It's been rough.
Yeah, it has.
Yeah.
I've been literally in the bubble. And when I look outside the bubble, it's only hurt and anger. So I always have to bring. Normally, I started bringing people to my house, and we were sitting down in my basement and having these. But luckily, that I'm actually able to call out. It hasn't been the best, but hopefully, my listeners are actually understanding that we're still dealing with technology, but it's the message behind all the BS. We are advocates for mental health. From a man's standpoint, it's always okay for women to go and get the help, because society makes them look like they're weak as it is now. So to them it's always okay. For us as men, it's always, we gotta put our chest up and we gotta be this rock. And at the end of the day, we have emotions just like women do. We have feelings, and the more women that are advocating for us to go, we will all be better people
100%,
collectively.
Man. 100%.
All right, Ant, take care of yourself, bro. Thanks for being on
you take care,
the episode
man.
of Melanin Dads. Take care, man.
Bye.
I'd like to thank everyone who really took the time to listen to the first episode. As I move forward, I actually was able to get in touch with a lot of good people who are going to be able to help me edit some of these episodes, so I'll be able to get them out faster. With that said, if you ever felt like you wanted to have a voice, I feel like the Anchor app does a great job of allowing you to start your podcast, and it's very easy to use. So what you could do is, if you have an iPhone, you can go over to the Apple Store, or if you have an Android phone, you can go to the Play Store and download the Anchor app, or go to Anchor FM from your computer to get started.
Deep story, which is a story that feels true. You take the facts out, you take the moral judgments out, and you have a picture, a metaphor for what goes on. In this, people are waiting in line, as in a pilgrimage to the top of a hill where there is the American dream. People have been waiting in line a long time. They feel deserving. Their feet are tired. The line hasn't moved in many years. And then they see some people cutting in line. Who is that? That would be blacks who now have access to jobs that used to be reserved for whites. That's women now have access to jobs reserved formerly for men. Immigrants and refugees and now endangered animals all seem to be getting ahead of you, having cut in line. Then people notice Barack Obama, a representative of the federal government, seeming to wave to the line cutters. He has sponsored them. Indeed, the federal government comes to seem like an instrument of their marginalization. It has indirectly put them back. You're now at the back of the line, and no one's really paying attention to you. And then someone ahead of the line turns around and says, "Oh, you're a southern, ill-educated, Bible-thumping redneck." And then you feel estranged. There's a moment in which you feel like now a stranger in your own land. And you're kind of stuck until one day someone comes along, a magisterial figure, powerful, who sees and recognizes your estrangement and says, "I'm going to give you your country back again."